I want to talk about fear today. I wrote an entire book on fear years ago because I identified it as the only actual problem that humans at least have in the world. It is literally at the root of every single one of the problems that we've ever had and that we currently have, is fear itself specifically. Now, I don't mean, I'll clarify this now, and I'm sure I'm going to clarify this many more times because we're going to talk about fear on this channel a lot. I'm not talking about, actual kind of rash. It's hard to use the word rational when you're talking about fear because fear makes you very irrational most of the time, maybe all the time. But logical fear, at least. The instinctual fear, kind of lizard brain fear that you have, like when you hear a rattlesnake in the grass, right? That's, a response to stimulus from the outside world that triggers a fight or flight response. That can be useful if it keeps you from stepping on a rattlesnake or walking down a dark alley in a really sketchy part of town at night by yourself, right? That kind of fear is natural. Maybe that's a better word, natural fear, that protects us. That's its job anyway. Now we're going to get into what is fear and all that kind of stuff in other videos much more deeply. Trust me, I will go into it because I will go through some of the concepts in my book and things I've thought of since I wrote the book. But what I want to talk about today really is the question, are you and me being manipulated by our fears? And when I'm talking about fear now, I'm not talking about the rattlesnake. I'm talking about the irrational, I don't know, I won't call them unnatural, but irrational fears. Fear itself that's the way I call it. And I, of course, stole that from FDR, who probably stole from somebody else. Fear itself is the kind of owned internal fears that we have about the world that we learned usually from our parents and family and friends and society at large. We learn those fears. And once we have a fear, especially one of these irrational fears, we can be yanked around by the chain of that fear by anyone who really knows psychology. All of modern advertising, pretty much all of it, is based on this concept. It is fear-based. The example I use in my book, The End of Fear Itself, is the slogan, "Choosy mothers choose Jif," peanut butter. Well, everybody knows peanut butter, but a lot of them probably don't remember that advertising campaign from way back in the 70s, I think, at least, maybe earlier than that. But the slogan, "Choosy mothers choose Jif," is actually a fear-based technique. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds kind of positive, right? But really it's negative. It's playing on the fears of mothers. Okay, it could be fathers these days, but mainly back then, of the fears of mothers that they aren't a good mother, right? Because, most good mothers are afraid they're not, right? Most good parents are always worried, am I screwing this up? If you're worried about screwing it up, you're probably not doing too bad a job, right? But Jif was playing off of that fear, okay? That's why it's like, choosy mothers, in other words, if you don't buy Jif, you're not a choosy mother, therefore you're a shitty mother. That's That's the subtext of that ad. And so they're yanking people around. And I always love Jif peanut butter, flavor-wise. It's just pretty much toxic these days because of the stuff they spray on the fields where they grow peanuts. But that's another story. They're trying to yank us around with our fears, our innate fears, Freudian stuff, man. In fact, Freud had a lot to do with the early advertising. A whole nother story. But a lot of influence on it anyway. They're yanking around by our fears. And this, once you know this, okay, and now you do, all right, I want you to pay attention during your day when you're watching TV, listening to radio, whatever. Anytime an ad comes up, I want you to pay a little attention to it this time. I'm pretty much blocking them out these days, but pay attention to it and see how they're using fear to yank you around, to get you to do something, buy something usually, right? Some product or solution or whatever, insurance or whatever. They're using fear to get you to move, to do something. Now, this is really, really important in political discourse, of course. Now, the way you can tell if you're being yanked around is like, are they bringing up does fear rise up in you when you hear a particular politician speak? Does it bring forth, compassion and empathy, or are you just triggered and angered after you listen to them? Okay. Now, all politicians use fear. Everyone I've ever seen. Because they have their own fears. Even though those of us on the left, okay, us libtards, have our own fears. What do we fear? Right-wing, Nazi, totalitarian assholes. We fear that they're going to get in power, and now they are. And because we know what happens when those kinds of people get into power. Now, that's not to say that Democrats and libtards don't make mistakes when they have power, because we damn sure have, which is one of the reasons why we're here in this situation that we're in this moment in time. I'm a historian by training. We'll talk about that more too later. But just know, I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. Fear is the driver of almost every historical calamity. No, it is the driver of every historical calamity. A group of people was afraid of something, and then, somebody who wanted power stoked that fear up and said, I can solve this problem, and you won't be eradicated. Hitler used fear all the time. Guess who else does? Mr. Trump. In fact, that's all he ever says. Everything he says, listen to what he says. If you don't believe me, if you're a Trump supporter and you've made it this far into the video, which I doubt, but if you did, good. Thank you for sticking around that long. But if you actually listen to what he says, everything he says is fear-based. I mean, literally, I've never heard anybody who was all fear-based, but until Trump. Every single thing. When he says, make America great again means it ain't now, because he says that all the time, that we're going to hell in a handcart, and only he can make it better. But that's all fear-based shit. One, yes, there's fucking problems in America today. No doubt about it. Tons of them. And some of them, Democrats should, if they haven't, take some credit for, because they and we have screwed up some shit. Largely because we compromised on our principles with Republicans for decades, who only really want to give everything to the rich. Hey, look at the laws they make when they make a law. Usually it's a tax break for really rich people, which is what they're trying to put through right now. And they use fear of, oh my God, the deficit. They're the ones that drive the deficit up every time. They drive it up, then they blame it on the next Democrat president that comes in, and he tries to do something to balance it or bring it down, and then they're like, oh, the deficit, and he gets voted out, and they bring in another Republican who drives it up even further. These are facts. You can look these up. Now, I know there's this whole push of alternative facts. There's no such fucking thing. There's either the facts or there's not the facts. And the facts are that the economies have always done better under Democratic presidents. And there was a time when I actually voted for some Republicans. The last one I voted for was McCain, actually, and that was a mistake. Thankfully, he didn't win. Although I respected him as a veteran and really as a senator, I thought he was pretty good because he's the one who pointed to campaign finance problems as the corruptive force in American politics, and he was dead fucking right on every bit of that. And he tried to get, laws in place to restrict big money in politics. He failed. Didn't have enough support on either side of the aisle, especially the Republican side of the aisle. But even there are a lot of Democrats, that were getting money too. Plain and simple. And selling themselves out to big business. So why are we in this spot? Fear. So the key to winning the war against fear is to start in here. In your own mind, okay? Heart, mind. When you feel that fear come up, you go, why? Where did that come from? And really start to think about that. We're going to talk about it more. Trust me. Because I ain't going nowhere. We're going to be around for a while. It's taken me a long time to figure out exactly what I wanted to talk about on YouTube. And we're on it. This is the time. I've chosen this finally this time. It's probably too late. Maybe I hope it's not too late, but it might be. To actually speak my mind, what I think about what's going on in the world. It's not like I've been completely silent about that, but I haven't started a YouTube channel or turned my YouTube channel into, essentially political, economic, philosophical critique until now. But I hope you'll stick around. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. Please share the videos. Because I don't have many followers yet. We're just getting started. But I thank you, anybody that's here already. Thank you for being here. Share it with your friends. And say, hey, this guy said something that resonated with me. You might want to check him out. I welcome everybody to leave comments. At this stage, I will probably read them later. I may not, especially if it's a bunch of MAGA bullshit. If you're MAGA and you want to leave a comment, that's fine. You can start an argument that just jumps my, pushes me up in the algorithm. So thank you. If you want to leave something. Otherwise, guys, fuck on. Live fearless.